Hi, this is a PowerPoint video about economic principle number 7, which is that good economics often conflicts with smart politics. We talked about tariffs. Tariffs are a tax on an import, which makes the price go up, and so demand goes down. And what has happened to our US tariff rates over time, going back here to the 1820s compared to the 2000s? Have they gone up or down? And why? The United States used to be a new, small, young country trying to keep out competition and products from Britain and France and Europe. And then the United States became the world's best economy, trying to sell our products where? To whom? So we became against tariffs, whereas in the beginning of our country, we were in favor of tariffs to block out the foreign competition. Another trade barrier that politicians put up to protect American workers and to protect American jobs are subsidies. Remember, what's a subsidy? How much does the US government pay in subsidies to our farmers? Well, if you look here, you see it's about $20,000, okay, or about $100 per hectare of farmland. That's a lot. Okay, here again, you can compare us to other countries. You see their politicians do the same thing. This is subsidies as a percent of farm income, basically. And you see here that our subsidies back around 2010 were about 10% of farmers' income came from government handouts. As of 2020, government support, that is government money and subsidies, will account for about 40% of total farm income this year. 40% coming from government handouts. 40% is almost what fraction? Where do the subsidies go geographically? Well, if you look at the key or legend here, you can see money per capita or money per person. And you see here, by looking at the colors, which part of the country gets the most subsidies. Here you can see it by congressional district. Okay, these are U.S. Department of Agriculture subsidies to the congressional districts. The darker the color, the more money they're getting. Which part of the country gets the most subsidies? Where do agricultural subsidies go politically? Well, if you look here, you can see that the counties that voted just for Trump and voted for Romney and Trump, the last two Republican presidential candidates, they got the most. Countries that flipped, counties that flipped from Obama to Trump got the most. Then these ones that are reliably Republican got second most. Why do you think the government under Trump gave the most money to counties that flipped from Obama to Trump? And if you look at the consistently Democratic counties, did they get as much money? Yes or no? Let's look here. Farmers have been clobbered, have been hurt financially during the last 2 years as Mr. Trump's trade wars with China led to tariffs on American agricultural exports. So China and Europe retaliated. They put tariff on our farm products that we were trying to sell abroad, including corn, soybeans, lobsters, and peanuts. So Trump started the market facilitation program to compensate farmers for the money they lost. And again, the counties that flipped from Democrat to Republican got the most. Why? How is the name Market Facilitation Program kind of a wrong name and kind of an ironic name? And by the way, subsidies have also happened under Democratic presidents too. Now, let's look at where these agricultural subsidies go geographically. 50% of the farm subsidies went to just 14% of the counties, especially to Iowa. Why is Iowa so important? I'll give you a hint. Think of the primaries where each party tries to pick their candidate. And what is Iowa's role? What is the role of the Iowa caucus? All right, now if you look here again at where the money goes, where the subsidies go geographically, why do they go to that part of the region, that region of the country? Well, let's look and see how that part of the country has voted. Why do you think the money went there? Who gets agricultural subsidies? Does it go to Farmer Fred and his wonderful wife Wilma? No. It goes to big farms. Individual small farmers don't really exist anymore. It goes to big farms. So look here at the 10 largest recipients of American government subsidies. You see here they got $20 million, $17 million. It says Jenks Family Farm or Herd Family Farm. These are huge farm operations. As it says here, most subsidies go to farms with the greatest income and wealth. You can see these are large farms earning $300,000 to $3,800,000 to $7 million. These are the big, rich farms, and they get the most money. And we'll talk about why that is. Have the government subsidies succeeded in helping farms survive? Well, let's look at the percent of American workers in agriculture, or the percent of the American population that farms from 1840 to now. Today, fewer than 2% of the nation farms, and they feed 100% of the nation, and they export the extra food. So have the subsidies succeeded in saving American farmers? Let's also look here. If you look at this one, you see what's happened to the number of farms. What's happened to the number of farms over time? And what has happened to farm size over time? Have we had more farms that have gotten smaller, or have we had fewer farms that have gotten larger? So why not? Why do we have so few farms today and a lot of big farms? It's because high tech has replaced workers. We call this churn. When machines and technology replaces human workers, it's called churn. And this high tech is expensive. For example, these new farm tractors use satellites. They drive themselves. They use the satellite. They can take the soil sample and they know where to add water, where to add fertilizer. They can treat this corner of the field different from that corner of the field. It is incredibly high tech. These tractors cost $200,000, $500,000. It's only the big, rich farms that can afford that. We really don't have individual Farmer Fred anymore. By the way, it's not just American politicians who hand out subsidies. It also happens in Europe. They hand out money to their farmers, the milk farmers, the sheep farmers, the soybean farmers, the meat farmers, the egg farmers, because what do the politicians want from the farmers? Now, over the years, people have become aware that subsidies are bad. Subsidies have been criticized as a waste of money. And so politicians and farmers have found alternatives. For example, we now have price supports, where the government guarantees farmers a price minimum or a price floor. So if the market price of, say, corn drops below X dollars a pound, then the government will step in and guarantee farmers they'll buy it for at least X dollars. Or when the farmers buy crop insurance, like farmers buy crop insurance against bad weather or bugs, then the government helps farmers pay for their crop insurance. And the third way that the politicians funnel money to the farmers is through something called conservation. In other words, if the farm simply lets the land lie fallow and rests and lets the soil rest, then the government will also pay the farmer money. From whom does the government get all the money to do that? So here you see $300 billion in subsidies over the last 2 decades, crop insurance, conservation. Where does the government get the money from? Here's another example of smart politics conflicting with good economics. Because of Trump's 2018 trade war with China, China stopped buying US tobacco. So US tobacco sales fell by about 20%, right? China retaliated and we slapped tariffs on their products. They stopped buying US tobacco. US tobacco sales fell by about 20%. Which state did that hurt the most? Well, which state produces the most tobacco? You can see it here, and you can see their production from 2017 to 2018 to 2019. Where is the production gone? And what do you know about that state politically? Is it reliably red in a Republican state? Is it reliably blue in a Democratic state? Or is it a toss-up? Is it a swing state? So, no surprise, in September, the agriculture quietly shifted some of the money from one fund, which cannot subsidize tobacco. Why not? Do we want to make tobacco cheap and available? And the government put it into a separate account that can bankroll the crop. So tobacco farmers are going to end up getting $100 million, easing some of their pain, okay, because North Carolina was hit hard when China refused to buy American tobacco. So what you see here is that farmers really are on government welfare. Okay. And if you look here at these farm payouts, they add up in 2019 to about $19 billion. So we're going to talk about welfare and how lots of times Americans want people to get off welfare and work for themselves, don't get a free government handout. And that's all understandable. But you also have to realize that these farmers are getting government handouts, and lots of times it's going to the richest farmers. And we'll come back to that and why that is. Let me give you another example of EP7 and smart politics conflicting with good economics. Let's look at US sugar policy. Is it sweet or sour? Good or bad? Well, the US government keeps out cheap foreign sugar and doesn't let it into this country by using quotas or number limits. Also, the US government guarantees US sugar farmers, and there are really two types, farmers growing sugar cane or farmers growing sugar beets, and the US government guarantees US sugar farmers a price minimum, a floor. So if the price of sugar drops below X dollars a pound, the government will come in and guarantee a minimum price. As a result, Americans have to pay twice the average world price for sugar. So if you look in red here, that's the world prices, and Americans have to pay basically twice that. You might say, I don't care. I don't use a lot of sugar. I'm not a baker. I don't make brownies all the time. But you do consume a lot of sugar. When and how? Also, who else buys a lot of sugar? Candy makers like Lifesavers, soda makers like Coca-Cola, and processed food makers like Heinz. Heinz ketchup. Ketchup actually has a lot of sugar in it. Are those sugar-using companies in favor of or against that US sugar policy? Why? If there are roughly 140,000 Americans who grow sugar, again, via sugar cane or sugar beets, and 600,000 Americans who work at companies that use sugar to make candy, soda, and other food, then US sugar policy should benefit the 100,000 growers or the 600,000 users. US sugar policy has incentivized or encouraged US candy companies to do what? Well, let's look at this headline from a Michigan newspaper. Lifesavers, which for 36 years made Lifesavers candy, yum yum, in the United States, is now moving operations to Canada, right across the Michigan border to Canada. Why do you think that Lifesavers is moving its operations to Canada? U.S. sugar policy, by keeping out cheaper foreign sugar, costs every American about $10 a year. And it hurts U.S. candy jobs and U.S. soda jobs. So why do the politicians continue that policy? Well, let's look at campaign contributions from the sugar policy, from the sugar industry, from the sugar companies. And remember those rich farmers I was telling you about before? They have been giving to both parties. Democrats are guilty here also, and Republicans. And this bill came up that would curtail or reduce the current sugar support program. And look at where the sugar companies are giving their money. They're giving their money to politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, to vote for the bill or to vote against the bill. Why else do politicians help U.S. sugar farmers at the expense of the rest of the country? Let's consider where sugar is grown. It's grown in these 3 states. In which states? And are they important politically? Yes or no? Well, let's look at that Great Lakes region and how it voted in 2000, 2004, which party did it vote for? 2008, which party? 2012, and in 2016, how did they vote? And what about Florida? Red, red, blue, blue, red. Does that make Florida reliably Republican or consistently Democratic, or is Florida a swing state? So U.S. sugar policy, is it sweet or sour? Good or bad? Why? How? This is why U.S. sugar policy is used in textbooks to illustrate protectionism. The politicians protect the U.S. sugar growers by blocking and keeping out cheaper foreign sugar. A very small group of people have managed to get public policy, that is the laws, to favor them, basically by taxing the rest of the population in the sense that Americans and candy and soda companies must pay more for sugar. This is an example of the law of concentrated benefits and dispersed costs. The benefits of the sugar policy are concentrated. They're enjoyed by a few sugar farmers, so they fight like hell and donate like hell, and the rest of us, we barely notice. It costs us about $10 a year, so the costs are dispersed, spread out over the rest of the American population, so we don't really notice. Last slide here. When companies sue each other and companies argue with each other over tariffs and over subsidies, these trade disputes are often handled by the World Trade Organization. It's kind of an international court that settles trade disputes. It's located in this building in Geneva in Switzerland. And here you can see the meeting here, okay? For example, Boeing is a huge American company, and our government gives it subsidies, our government gives it money, and the WTO ruled, it found that that was unfair, so it let the EU, the European Union, put tariffs or taxes on $4 billion of US exports in retaliation. So that's an example of international trade disputes. It gets settled in the WTO. I hope this was clear. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.